On the Catholic Answers Live Supershow.
What's up?
What's up, Thomas?
What's up?
What's up, Emily?
Hey.
Hey. How's it going? Today, another Super Show with no Sai because he's out just cruising, you know? He's just him and the whole crew.
Sai is cruising on the Rhine.
Yeah, there you go.
These are good friends.
But we don't need Sai to have a good time here.
No, we don't.
We don't. All right.
They do on the Rhine, apparently. They need Sai to have a good time. But in here, we're gonna have a fun show today.
It's
right?
gonna be
Edgar? This is gonna be a fun show.
It's gonna be such a fun show talking about such depressing topics.
We're gonna make it. Yeah, how fun do we want to make this?
All
actually?
right.
How appropriate would that be? Also, what's up, Emily? Is it as rainy over there on the East Coast as it was here in rainy Southern California?
You guys are getting rain? That's shocking.
I woke up at 2 a.m. and heard just pounding rain up in Rancho Bernardo.
Rain. Can you hear that? Pounding rain.
Did you get that in La Mesa?
I heard trickles.
You heard, dude, we got dumped on all night long for all that grass that I don't have.
That, my friends, is a Southern California born and raised talking about simple rain.
Mm-hmm. And thank God it stopped before I had to drive.
What would you do?
Who knows what would happen?
Well, it's not as bad as situations like Canada and Europe, which is the opening topic today.
Yeah. Are we getting more specific than that?
Oh, yeah, exactly.
No, kidding.
So,
we love our Canadian and European listeners. Only the ones who are here right now.
Yeah. Emily, can you see our shot, or the wide shot, or you can just see Thomas?
No, I just see the wide shot with Thomas.
Just me. No
okay.
Edgar.
Swap to the wide shot. Good. Okay, because
It's not a problem.
It's not a problem, all right?
Come on.
All right. Would you like me to read you the headline for this opening topic we're going to talk about?
Let's hear it.
According to EWTN News, Canadian priest offered euthanasia twice while recovering from hip fracture. So this is where we are in society, where a Catholic priest is offered euthanasia not once, but twice because of a simple hip fracture. Not like, I know hip fractures I heard are pretty rough, but
I wouldn't know. But do you?
I think those are some of the most more devastating ones. Like an actual full on break, like if you break a hip, they can be, it's pretty rough. Mm-hmm. But a hip fracture, you can still recover from it. It's not a death sentence if you fracture your hip.
Certainly not.
But if you break it, then it gets into more dicey territory. But simply this, the Canadians, God bless Canada, decided to offer him euthanasia. Let me read a little bit of this article for you. A priest from Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, recovering from a hip fracture in Vancouver General Hospital, said he was twice offered assisted death by healthcare staff who knew he was a priest and opposed euthanasia, a practice critics say is growing as medical professionals are increasingly encouraged to initiate such conversations.
You hear that? You hear that? It's people 10, 15, 20 years ago saying, we knew this would happen.
Yep.
We told you. This is exactly what was going to happen, right? And you hear something else? It's everyone saying, oh, slippery slope fallacy. Oh, stop it. Stop saying. You guys are such consequentialists. You guys think that. Is that me? Am I sounding through? No,
it's probably me.
Someone's echoing. Anyway, you can hear that in addition to all the people 10, 15 years ago saying, stop being so, what's the word? Catastrophist, right? Is that the word? And look where we are. It's actually happening.
Yeah, I mean, I remember thinking people were saying back in the day that, look, it's going to be offered for those who are requesting it because of a dire circumstance. It's not like we're going to be offering it to every person trying to hand it out like candy. And here we are in 2026, and you have a situation like this, which I have to read you further details if you guys are interested in that. So he says, there are some things you just don't talk about to some people, said Father Larry Holland, who has completed studies in healthcare chaplaincy in addition to serving at numerous parishes in the Archdiocese of Vancouver. He described his reaction when a doctor brought up the option of medical aid in dying, or they just refer to it as MAID, should should his condition deteriorate. I think I was very shocked, he said. It is such a sensitive subject. So he's currently recovering from this hip fracture from the fall he had in his bathroom on Christmas Day. He spoke to the BC Catholic about the offers of MAID from two healthcare professionals, despite their knowing he was a Catholic priest. Holland said he wasn't dying then or now, and that the priest and the doctors mentioned of MAID left him kind of silent for a moment. The doctor then raised the subject again, saying it's something they have to discuss with someone who's been given a terminal diagnosis.
How about that? It said he wasn't dying then or now, and then they said it's something they have to discuss with someone who's been given a terminal diagnosis. Not this situation.
Yeah. Emily, any thoughts on this? By the way, can you hit mute on your computer? Because I think we're getting feedback.
Oh. There we go. Is that better?
I think so, yeah.
Was it coming from me?
I think it was coming from you, yeah.
It's coming from someone.
Oh my God. Okay, well, I'll have to not hear you while I'm speaking, so you can't interrupt me. I'm sorry. But I mean, yeah, I agree with you, Thomas. I think that people kind of portrayed medically assisted suicide or euthanasia, whatever you want to call it, as like, you know, something that's rare, something that's not going to become widespread or frequent. And then now it seems like every day I'm reading an article, especially in Canada, that there's somebody that does not have a terminal illness that's being asked by their doctors or somebody else if they want to consider being euthanized. It's like, this is just absurd.
It is, and it's not only the slippery slope that makes it creepy, like we knew this was going to come, but it's also the fact that it's sort of destroying the identity of healthcare completely, right?
Yeah.
What is healthcare supposed to be? Do no harm, right? Or I think I saw it put once, cure if you can, and if you can't, then care.
Yeah.
Right? But suddenly we've turned care into kill. And
yeah.
that the alliteration still works, but that's about it. Nothing else about that works. You can't just call killing caring and expect no one to notice the difference.
Yeah. It's the whole Hippocratic Oath seems to be having a broader definition nowadays.
Mm-hmm. Incredibly broad.
Yeah, no kidding. And it's interesting because I want to read more of this article and kind of how they went about it. So let me continue on a little bit. Holland said sorry, I already read that one. Holland recalled telling the doctor that he was morally opposed to euthanasia. The doctor explained that he just wanted to make sure that if a terminal diagnosis came up or not, I knew of a different service I had access to. Weeks later, a second offer of MAID came from a nurse who the priest said seemed uncomfortable raising the topic and was likely doing so out of compassion because of the pain that he was enduring. It's a false compassion, really, he said. A spokesperson for Vancouver Coastal Health, which operates the hospital, told the BC Catholic in an email that staff may consider bringing up MAID based on their clinical judgment, provided they possess the necessary knowledge and skills to do so. Staff are also responsible for answering questions when patients bring up the topic of MAID, the spokesman said. Yeah, it seems like it's more than that now, because they go on to say that, give me a second here as I'm scrolling through. So they end up talking to a few other medical professionals, and they start looking at the actual documents where this thing comes from. So they talk about the options that they give, and in these booklets where they describe this kind of information, they actually use in the example that it says healthcare professionals may draw incorrect assumptions about a person's view on MAID. They may assume that the patient objects to MAID because she is a Roman Catholic nun, and yet Roman Catholic nuns and other dedicated to their faith-based ways of life have requested MAID. So in this example, they're using a Catholic nun in the example of these booklets, of their pamphlets. They're using this, saying that this person, we should offer it to maybe a Catholic nun, even though that they are hardcore Catholics and living out their faith. Because you know what? We've had people who are very, very faithful to their faith, but yet they still have requested euthanasia. So it's not like they're like, well, just in case. They're specifically targeting Catholics. Like it's very obvious in the literature that they're offering when it comes to this stuff.
You read it that way? You think they want it? I don't want to read it that way, but
I mean, if they're using the example of a nun in their
Right.
literature, they ended up updating it, to be fair, but that was the initial literature, was using the example of a nun who said maybe she wants maid, so we
Right.
should offer it to her.
Right. I wonder. I mean, part of me wonders, like, did they choose that as that example as someone who's so unmistakably religious and who you would so thoroughly expect to not want to do that? That like that's why they use that as an example. I hope that's why they used it, but I don't know. That it's hard to shake the feeling now that you mention it that maybe it is a little bit of a let's get these Catholics in line here.
Yeah.
Let's get them on board with this.
Yeah.
Any thoughts, Emily?
Yeah, I think that it bothers people that the Catholic Church has lines that we are unwilling to cross. When it comes to abortion, when it comes to IVF, when it comes to a lot of the moral issues that the church is staunchly against and has always been against and will always be against, that really like bothers people. And I think they try to push our boundaries and our limits. And when a Catholic, even somebody that is religious or, is a priest, when they mistakenly fall into these sins, they use that as like their trophy or their token icon of like, look at this person, they did it, so Catholics are okay with it. And it's like, no, I think when you're waving in somebody's face who is deeply suffering, the possibility of ending that suffering, for some people that's a huge temptation, but that doesn't, someone's decision in a moment of weakness is not the moral standard that we should be following after. So I think it's just sad. Like when I read that, I was sad because whether it's true or not, like that's unfortunate, and somebody's death should not be used as like a token icon of like me pushing my ideology.
Well, it's interesting because even Father Holland said in this article, he says that he admitted that he was in so much pain that he felt the temptation to accept maid. He said it's a human reaction. We always look to the easy way out. And it really is like it says in the article that they're playing devil's advocate, trying to lead that people into the temptation of committing suicide. And I don't know. It's becoming more and more blatant, and it's almost it's almost unbelievable to think that this is to the point where it's gotten. Thoughts?
Sorry, I'm trying to look something up. I brought in our Catholic Answers 20 Answers End of Life Issues booklet, and like
which you can find at shop.catholic.com.
Indeed,
by the
you
way.
can. I was thumbing through it before the show just to like kind of refresh myself on this, and I can't find. I did find it, but I'm glad we kind of brought up the case that the fact that when you're offering physician assisted suicide to someone who's in terrible pain that's not a healthy mental state. That's not really a free choice, is it? That you're really compromised by your suffering in that instance. And there was there was a good section in this book that I was looking for, and it says this is part of the answer to the question. What about freedom of choice? If someone finds life intolerable, why shouldn't he be allowed to off himself? That I'm censoring for YouTube, even if it means getting someone help. So it says at the last part of this answer says, consider a person who is battling severe illness or pain. One day he may feel ready to give up, and the next day he may be prepared to fight on. This is part of the human condition. People in these circumstances, their strength of will ebbing and flowing, are vulnerable to suggestion and pressure, giving them the legal equivalent of a loaded gun on a day when their will is weak, such as when they've just received a terminal diagnosis or when their condition is particularly troubling or before they've found a doctor who can give them the relief they need. That is a very dangerous thing. Despair often comes in bouts and can be caused by a number of factors, many of which are temporary. Is a choice to off oneself under these loaded circumstances truly free? I would argue no.
Yeah.
Especially not if you're a 79-year-old priest who, by his own admission, said that it was a little bit, it sounded nice for just a brief second, and thank goodness he was strongly morally formed, as a good priest to fight off that temptation. But how many other people are going to be able to fight it off that much? And in those cases, their blood is partially on the hands of those who even thought they were doing the compassionate thing, but you can't. That can't be a compassionate thing to someone whose judgment is compromised.
And how quickly before we go from this to, hey, this is an option that's available to you, to, hey, this is what we're recommending for you, and to consent, just don't say anything, and then we'll just move forward with it. It reminds me of, like, have you ever watched the movie The Revenant with Leonardo DiCaprio, where he gets attacked by the bear?
The bear attack. I haven't seen it, but I know the story generally.
Yeah. So the villain of this movie is played by Tom Hardy, and he's
great villain actor.
Yeah, no kidding. And you have
the bear attack.
Leonardo DiCaprio. His vocal cords are kind of destroyed, so he can't speak, and he's a bit of a drag on the rest of the people because they're trying to pull him to a safe place where they can finally cure his, get him taken care of. But they're in a dangerous situation. So Tom Hardy comes up to him and he says, you're making life, basically paraphrasing, you're basically making life difficult for all of us, and you're suffering a lot. All you have to do is just blink, and I will end it for you. I will have compassion on you, and I'll end it quickly. And it's like, I think of a situation like this, and I think, how quickly before we get into a situation like that? And it's like, it can escalate really quickly.
He just said the quiet part out loud, too. Like, you're being a real burden on us, man.
Yeah.
So why don't you just tell me that it's okay to let you die? Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. That's horrifying.
Basically, yeah.
Music Mary 1331 says, this is so scary as someone who has chronic pain. I do not need this temptation. So there you go. You have it from someone saying it themselves. And God bless you, Music Mary. I don't know what kind of chronic pain you're in, but I can't imagine what kind of a life that is. And you're sticking it out. Hopefully you're uniting your sufferings with those of our Lord's on the cross and making use of that suffering. But it's people like her that are going to be the most vulnerable to something like this the more it gets normalized.
Well, pain will do something to you, or discomfort. I don't know if I told you guys this. So half of my neck here is numb because of basically a botched surgery. The doctor burned off some of the nerves, so half of my neck is numb, and it's been numb for I think 10 years now. And I want to call them like phantom itches, to where in this numb area where I can't feel anything, I'll get an itch and there's no way to scratch it.
Oh, wow.
And I just have to sit with it until it goes away. And it's in moments like that where if it goes on for more than like 5-10 minutes, I'm kind of starting to go mad a little bit. So in a situation like that, I would want to be like, I'll do anything to get rid of this discomfort, this pain, this thing that just won't go away. So being put in a situation as the priest here in a moment of weakness, it really is, like you said, handing him a loaded gun.
Yeah, thank God you're not in Canada and telling your doctor about this.
I know, right?
He might just gesture towards a noose and say, "Consider the following." Like, sorry, not to be too dark there, but it's what they're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna add that I think when you don't have any meaning for suffering, and when there is no purpose to your existence or to your life, then, I mean, why not eliminate suffering at all costs, even the cost of your own life? That's like the real battle that we're facing, is people they don't see any meaning to suffering anymore, and they don't see any meaning to life anymore because they've removed God from the entire picture. So I think that's the uphill battle that we're facing. There's obviously a root issue to all of this too. I think about Anne Hathaway saying recently, abortion is another word for mercy, right? Like, this is all under the same guise of like, it's merciful to kill people, to eliminate suffering sometimes before it even happens, so that, people don't experience more suffering in the world. Like, that's the reality of where we're living. But until we get at the root of the issue, it's always going to be manifesting in different ways. Even if we made euthanasia illegal, it's going to, creep up in other ways.
Yeah. It's funny, in today's society, I feel like suffering itself is looked upon as a sin, as a cardinal sin that needs to be eradicated from this world. Where in the Catholic point of view, you walk into a church, what's the first thing you see? You see the crucifix up in the front. Exactly. You see that thing. And there's a reason why this sign of contradiction is a sign of our hope. Is the idea of embracing your suffering and carrying your cross every single day is rooted in our faith. You said it perfectly. When suffering is stripped of its meaning, then where do you go from there?
I saw a really good tweet years ago. They have these ways of sticking in your minds, a really good post that you see every now and then. I said on another show, it's like the Proverbs of our age now, but I a couple years ago, I saw this one tweet that stuck in my mind, and they said something along the lines of, it's really interesting how Christianity didn't necessarily develop a perfect answer to the problem of suffering, but it did offer a use for suffering. It actually made suffering into something that had a purpose, and like you were talking about, Emily, something that was directed towards a higher end, that being redemptive suffering, something that you can employ to pray for other people and be more conformed to the image of Christ. And theologians have throughout the church's history have attempted to explain the problem of evil and the problem of suffering. At the end of the day, it comes down to a massive leap of faith. But it's I had never thought about it before reading that post, that like you can actually that's almost a secondary question, because we're going to suffer no matter what. And the fact that God actually gave us something to do with that rather than making it completely pointless is almost more comforting than having a completely, perfectly, logically satisfactory answer for why it's happening. If I know why it's happening, I'm still suffering, so what?
Yeah.
But if I actually have something I can do with that, unite it to the cross, that's more hopeful.
Yeah. I have a couple of comments here that I want to read off. I don't know how to pronounce it. Manius Curious Donatus?
Close enough.
Yeah, close enough. I can see how so many people falling for this. Dementia patients and their families, unscrupulous children, and people in despair. Like, you're given an option, then you actually start considering it. And then if you're, I don't know, the idea of we've already had situations where we have kids. Teenagers, or just even people in their 20s. What was the recent situation in Spain?
Oh, yeah.
I think that got a lot of traction before it actually happened. Unfortunately, she was euthanized.
Yeah, and that poor girl had been through a lot.
Yeah.
She had gone through unimaginable horrors.
Can you imagine if she would have sought out the support and the healing, especially from a Catholic organization, the change in that life and the good she could have done instead of seeking this out? But the idea of this thing is compassionate. It's just false compassion. That's all it is.
Think of a saint like Josephine Bakhita. How familiar are you guys with her story?
I'm not very familiar with it.
A little bit. I'll give you the brief rundown. But she was she was an African saint. She was before she was Christian. She was bought by slave owners, and they abused her horribly. They did this awful ritual thing where they made cuts in her skin and then rubbed salt in the wounds and stuff to make it permanent, and they mistreated her every single day and everything. And so eventually she was freed from that. She was bought by I believe it was by a European nobility, and she was brought to live in their house as, I don't remember, I'm botching the details. The point is, she was freed from that situation, and then this European who now had custody of her, it was through that she was introduced to the Catholic faith, and then she eventually joined an order and became a nun. And what she said later on was something to the effect of, if I had never been abused by these captors, if I had never been sold into slavery in the first place, then this beautiful I'm getting it so bad, but I never would have ended up in the situation where now I know Christ. Now I'm in the church and everything. And just like that poor girl in Spain, as you were saying, imagine if she had an opportunity like that. Imagine if she had been able to meet an order of nuns like St. Josephine did, who were able to take her in and introduce her to Christ and the healing that he offers. St. Josephine had that, thank God.
Yeah.
And no one, as far as we know, was offering to just say, you suffered enough, why don't you just end it now? Yeah,
exactly. Any closing thoughts before we move on from this heartfelt and uplifting specific story that we're covering?
finish our check-in on Canada?
Nope.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we can move on. Keep everybody on prayer and keep Canada in prayer because, my goodness, this ain't looking too good.
Yeah.
And all right. So Emily, you have a story you're going to share with us.
Well, I have more of a question I want to ask you both.
All right.
So,
I didn't read for this one.
what is your greatest accomplishment besides don't say being Catholic? You can't say being Catholic. What would you consider the greatest accomplishment in your life?
I think I have to say having 2 kids. I think that's probably objectively it.
I mean, honestly, that's marrying an incredible woman and having an awesome kid. That's honestly the best.
Yeah.
Nothing else compares. I mean, there's so much that you can look back at the things that I've done, and none of it even holds a light to this beautiful family that I've built.
Wonderful. I love it. So now this is getting into a little bit of a story. Okay. So recently I was scrolling through social media, as I do, partly for work, partly for hobby, partly because I have problems. But this is a comment that I left on somebody's video, and I'll explain the background of the video. But first, let me just read you the comment. Okay. I wrote, if I had to choose between my college degrees and my husband, I'd choose my husband any day. Marrying him is my greatest accomplishment.
How dare you?
And if you could believe it, I had many, many women responding to that very negatively. And a few of the top comments were along the lines of like, I'm setting women back. I'm so embarrassed for you. I mean, somebody said, let's see, I wrote them out. I'm actually writing an indulgence article on this. This is the saddest thing I've heard in a while. Seek help. Okay, those are the top 5 responses I got. And so the context of this video, I didn't think what I said was controversial or crazy. I'm thinking, would these people really say they would choose their college education over like their spouse? Because, I mean, how much do you value your marriage and your spouse if that's the case? But the context of the video was this woman saying, you know, she's graduating with her bachelor's degree, and if people are not congratulating her for that, but would be quick to congratulate her for getting engaged to a man, then they will never be invited to her future wedding, because how dare you congratulate me on just getting a ring on my finger, but not congratulate me on all the hard work and dedication I put into getting my college education. So I'm curious about your guys' thoughts. I'm glad I started with that opening question, but I want to know, what are your thoughts in general about this woman's views? Is getting a college education more valuable than getting married and having children? Obviously, we're all married here. I don't have children like you guys do, so you can speak a little bit more into that category.
Can I just say, I am sick of this thing that people do online where they invent false dichotomies or imaginary scenarios and then get mad at people for doing the wrong thing. So what was it again? She said, if you'll congratulate me on getting married but not on my college degree, you're not invited to my wedding. First of all, bold of you to assume that you're going to have a wedding. Second, like,
that's very true.
Just stop inventing people to get mad at, man. Like, this is just a wider trend on social media that in my several years, more than several years of doing, like, I've seen people do, and I'm guilty of myself. I have to make a rule for myself of, like, don't argue with stupid people who exist only in your mind, because that's just going to A, make me prideful because I'm going to win every time, obviously, and B, make me miserable because I'm not going to be talking to anyone in the real world. Okay, I'm done with that part.
Well, hold on a second. You're telling me that arguing with people online makes you miserable?
Not even that. Arguing with people in my head.
Oh, in your head.
who I always defeat every single time, who are based on people on the internet. Okay, now that that's out of the way. I don't want to fall into a similar dichotomy of saying just outright that marriage is in every case more praiseworthy than a college degree, right? Because both of those are, in a way, forming you. They're forming you as a human being, right? A college degree, presumably, depends where you go and what you study, is going to perfect you, right? It's going to build up your intellect in a certain discipline. It's going to make you more more of a free person, hopefully, because the more faculties you have, the more free you are to exercise them in the world. But also marriage is going to, again, if it's to the right person, you have the right goal in mind, all these qualifiers. This is the education I got. I have to qualify everything. So ask yourself if that perfected me or not. But marriage should also perfect you by, as Dr. Greg Popchak was saying on yesterday's show, it teaches you how to love someone the way that Christ intended you to love them and the way that he loves you. And so I suppose maybe I could come down on one side after all that and say, well, yes, marriage is in fact more praiseworthy than that, because love is the highest of all the virtues, right? It's the most praiseworthy of all the virtues. Even if you excel in knowledge after getting a degree, that doesn't necessarily teach you how to love. But once you get into the nitty gritty of all of it and start comparing one particular maybe bad marriage to one really good degree that you got, then it gets a little more in the weeds. I don't know. That's my way too long TAC answer to the question.
Of saying I don't know.
I'm saying in a way yes and in a way no. The paramount philosopher's answer.
Okay. I can't top that.
No, make something that's easier to understand than that. You can definitely do that.
Look, I agree with all your qualifiers. The if it's with the right person and versus not the right person, which can maybe not lead you down the right path. But it's the same thing with also a degree that is useful versus a degree that's not useful. Theology isn't always useful unless you're going to go into a very specific field, which is the degree that I got, was in theology. So it worked out. I'm here, right? Where I got the Catholic answers.
Sure
but
did.
not everybody, didn't work out for everybody. But repeat it for me one more time, just so I kind of refresh my memory. What was the initial question? What's your greatest achievement? Your greatest achievement was your husband, not necessarily all your degrees. Am I right on that?
Correct.
Okay. And the response was, how dare you? You're pushing women back, or you're, it was all sorts of nastiness. I mean, it doesn't shock me. I think anytime you post anything on the internet, you're going to get pushback for literally anything you say. You can say,
this is wisdom.
I mean, no matter what, you're going to get pushback. Now, I think this is all anecdotal from seeing people who've got married young versus people who got married later, and people who are still single in their early to late 30s, who doesn't matter how many degrees they've received. The people that haven't been married, there's still a longing and an emptiness that they still seek to fulfill. And you may be able to have maybe you may have a similar feeling like, man, I really wish I could have gotten an education when you're in your 30s and 40s, but that longing is not the same for the longing for a spouse, that longing for love. You're comparing the desire for knowledge versus the man's innermost desire for love. And I don't know. I don't. Maybe I'm not making sense on this, but it doesn't make any sense for me to compare and for people to be upset. Yes, you have achievements in life, and if you, such as earning a degree and going out and doing great things, that's fine. But as Scripture says, if you have no love, then what? Like, in the end, what do you have? There's nothing there. I don't know. Maybe that made absolutely no sense. You tell me.
No,
less coherent than you.
No, I think that was more still.
No, okay, those are good. So I did a little bit of research kind of behind this, because I'm like, okay, let's dissect the Gen Z female mind, although that sounds terrifying, being a Gen Z woman. So what I found was in a study that was done last year, I think September 2025, women ages 18 through 29 were asked to rank what is most conducive to their understanding of success. How would they define success? And can you guess what the number one standard for them in living a successful life, what that standard would be?
Based on how this conversation started, it sounds like it's probably their college education, having a degree.
Sort of. Do you want to take a guess at it?
I would say a successful career. I don't know.
Yep, that's what it was. It was career. It was having a career that is fulfilling for them. And then what came out in 11th place was being married. And I think either 10th or 12th was having children. Thankfully, number 8 was having, a spiritual relationship or something. So I'm like, okay, God is sort of in that mix. But like the top 3 was like successful career and having like financial independence and freedom. So like the top 3 were about career and money, basically. That's how Gen Z women are defining success in their mind. And so I think that's where this is rooted in ultimately is, you give women this choice in their mind of like, is marrying a man and having their children, which can impede with their career and their career trajectory and the amount of money they can make, is that something that's more successful, conducive to success, or is getting a college education and getting, making 6 figures, is that more conducive to success? And a lot of their minds, it's the latter, right? So I don't know. I'm curious. I mean, obviously, this is coming from a female perspective. So I'm curious. You guys are obviously not women, last time I checked. So why don't you share your thoughts? Like, where do you think this is coming from? Like, why are they so opposed to family life as being a measure of success nowadays?
I think our society today glorifies the idea of just wealth, beauty, and doing whatever you want at all times. It really is willing, as I've heard it put, willing to sacrifice anything and everything at the altar of self. Everything to truly live out who I am. I'm the one that's most important here, and I'm going to do what makes me happy. I'm going to do what's best for me in sacrificing everything around me, and that includes in having family. I've heard this argument also given for abortion. Like, I am going to... this baby would have been an impediment to my life and my success how I want it. I've also seen situations where people cut their families off because they're not encouraging me to live out my best life, to my riches, my success, because I'm making all my money, whether it's moral or immoral, and it just goes down this rabbit hole. I'm interested in also hearing. I think I've seen this study that you're talking about where they asked Gen Z women, but they also asked Gen Z men this question. And their top ones were marrying a good woman and having kids. So it's almost like inverted how it used to be, where men were like always out there looking for luxury, riches, and successes, and women tending to say, I guess let me qualify this, in American society, not necessarily all societies, but in American society in, 10, 15, 20, 30, 50 years ago, I don't know, maybe before that, but being a homemaker, being a mom, having kids, and maybe bringing in money through other means that's not working outside of the home. In today's society, it seems kind of inverted. The man wants children and a wife, and the women want the riches. I don't know.
Can you remind me what the question was that was posed in this poll? How it was phrased?
Yes. So the question was, which of the following is important to your personal definition of success?
Okay.
And they were given 13 different options to rank and choose. And so number 1, actually, for both female and male, was having a job or career you find fulfilling. Number 2, so the top 3 were actually the same. So that was first. Second was having enough money to do the things you want to do. And third was achieving financial independence. And men ranked being married as actually number 7 compared to women ranking it as number 11. So men definitely prioritize marriage more than women do.
Yeah, but they're both still have the same goals of doing whatever I want to do. And
yeah, I mean, those 3 categories ranking in the top for both sexes, that I think that really tells most of the story. Which is that we don't want to have to worry about where our next meal is going to come from, right? I think that is a pretty good that's a pretty good barometer of success. Is how much can I provide for myself? How do I have a job that pays me well enough to live? So I think viewing it through that lens is more realistic, maybe, to me, than viewing it through the lens of, I just want to serve myself. It can easily lead to that, of course. Like, when I definitely know that when I was a bachelor and I only had to care for myself, I was living for myself a lot more than I am now, married with 2 kids. And so it can easily, very, very easily tempt you to that. But at the same time, I would I wouldn't be surprised if many women are thinking are placing more emphasis on having a degree and a job because don't know when they're going to get married, and they know that until that day comes when hopefully they can be married to a man who can support them. In the meantime, they can support themselves, right? I am more inclined to think of it that way, partly because I'm married to someone who had to do that for a while, and also because again, like those top three categories really kind of say it all to me. Does that make sense?
I think it does. I would push back a little bit because I would say I think we see this opposite extreme now with women who, back in 1993, this is another study that was done. Girls in 12th grade were asked, "Do you want to get married someday?" And like 83% of them said yes. And then back in 2023, 12th graders were asked the exact same question: "Do you hope to get married someday?" And like 60% said yes. So we see this desire for women in general to get married. It's less of a priority in their mind. And even one of the comments that I received from what I said initially, which is I would choose my husband over my college education, was, what are you going to do? And if he leaves you, what are you going to do? You're going to be wishing you had your degrees, basically. I think there's a lot of like, there's an opposite extreme reaction that women are having of like, women weren't allowed to pursue and have the same opportunities that women nowadays have, maybe 30 years ago. And so in their mind, they are trying to overcompensate for that by being too independent and not wanting to rely on a man in any capacity whatsoever. And I think they actually see it as an affront. Like if I said, no, I actually want to rely on my husband's income, and I like value that, and I'm comfortable doing that. I think there's a lot of women, especially Gen Z nowadays, who would say they're not comfortable relying on their husband's income and support because they don't fully trust that their husband cares, like loves them selflessly, where he would provide for them and not maybe one day leave them for something else. I think that's where a lot of these women are coming from, to be honest, is like a fear mentality surrounding marriage and relationships, and probably why they don't want to make the commitment and they don't see the utility in making that commitment because it's just a hassle once the relationship potentially ends. Now I have to do all this legal stuff. Well, it would have just been easier to not get married in the first place.
It's a very
what are your thoughts on that?
It's a very selfish way of thinking, isn't it? It's like, because I'm going to be left in the end, I'm going to be left alone, or the other person might betray me at some point. Because every time I get online and listen to these relationship gurus, it's always as though you want to find yourself a good person of the opposite sex, but always be ready and protected, because if they backstab you and betray you, you need to be holding all the cards. And it's like, that's a horrible way of entering into a relationship. Like, I don't think you're doing this whole relationship thing right. And that idea of not wanting to depend on somebody else's income is with the idea of, hold on a second, if I'm betrayed, if I'm left alone, then I have nothing. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I think women are kind of conditioned to feel like they need to, like, it's like every man for himself mentality of like, even in marriage, you can't fully trust that this man is completely selfless and doesn't have an inkling to maybe leave you for a younger woman or cheat on you or betray you. So you need to make sure that everything is in place for you to be okay by yourself if it leads to that. Yeah. And I mean, the prenup mentality too, I mean, that's very common, I would say, in marriages nowadays, to sign a prenup and have everything squared away if, potentially something goes wrong. It's like, if you're entering your marriage with that mentality already, that you believe this person could leave you and, could take everything with them and just kind of leave you to yourself. Like, why are you marrying this person? Why are you marrying this person if you would say you value, the hypothetical that obviously this is like not a real situation. So Thomas, you can rest in peace with that. But, I propose a hypothetical of like, if you gave me two possible worlds, where one world, maybe I met my husband and I didn't get a college education, versus I got my college education but never met my husband. Like, which world would I choose? I would 100% choose the world where I met my husband and didn't get a college education. Obviously, I'm not a man, so like maybe the burden of providing doesn't fall on me so as much. So like it's a little bit more, I can say that more confidently. But I also think my college education experience was a lot different than your guys's, because even though I
Fair
went
enough.
to a Catholic university, I honestly felt like 90% of my education was useless, and that I could have learned more studying on my own than actually paying tens of thousands of dollars to this university.
It sounds like
So
you did. So,
that's also
yeah.
where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, right. That's when we get into our qualifiers of if you actually studied something good and had good teachers and everything.
Why do you look at me like you say that?
Me? Oh, please, no. Sorry. What rivalry?
Grandstanding at TACers.
What TAC Franciscan rivalry? What are you talking about? That doesn't exist. I think this is kind of revealing what I'm getting from this conversation is it's revealing that how you feel about these questions depends heavily on how you perceive marriage and how you enter into it. Like we're talking about prenup culture, and prenup culture seems to me to be a product of of thinking that marriage is something that works for me right now. It's something that we're entering into because it works for each of us right now. This is it's self-serving, right? And I'm not saying every single person who ever in history got a prenup was thinking that way, but it bespeaks that kind of mentality where I'm guarding myself against a future when maybe we finally decide, okay, this marriage had a good run, it's no longer useful to either of us, so let's split and get out of here. And if that's all you think of marriage as, then it makes sense to say both that like let's protect ourselves from that future, and also that like something more enduring like knowledge, like a degree, would actually be more worthwhile. But when you take marriage to be what it is, which is the foundation of society, right, and a lifelong commitment of two persons to one another, of total emptying of self to one another and giving oneself entirely to the other, suddenly that sounds a lot more weighty and a lot more important, right? And something that you're going to place a lot more value on than a degree, because you shouldn't take apart what God has put together, right? But you don't necessarily have to treat your knowledge that you got at a university with the same kind of reverence. And so, yeah, this does seem to be a clashing of not just cultures, but of different worlds, of different ways of thinking entirely, where, Emily, the people you're talking to see marriage in very utilitarian terms and as something that can very quickly be turned against you, where you're seeing marriage as a lifelong giving of oneself to your other who you love with your whole being.
Yeah, you saying that, I'm actually curious to see what are the college dropout rates versus divorce rates. How do they compare? Like, how many people are more willing to abandon their college than abandon their marriage? Like,
Yeah.
Do you know how much debt you're left
tough.
in even if you don't get your degree? That's the hard part, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I agree with you, Thomas. I think people see marriage as just a social institution. They don't see it as something that's actually a sacrament and something that works to make you a good person. And also, I don't know how much they even value being a good person. You know, like at least on my deathbed, I'm not going to be thinking of like, oh, remember that one time I got my bachelor's degree? It's like I'm going to be thinking about the people that I loved, the way that I served God, and like how my love is leaving a legacy, which, you know, somebody could go and have a great career and leave a legacy behind for the world in that sense. But I still think at least the people that I look up to the most is not, you know, somebody who made a huge scientific advancement, but, you know, somebody that was an amazing saint that left a huge impact on the world because of their love and their sacrifice. So that's what I value. I guess Gen Z women are not agreeing with me on that, but oh well.
They need to know. They need to know what they're missing out on.
Yep.
Because it's
true.
a lot better than what the world is telling them it is. Yeah. I don't know. If you reframed it into would you rather be married or have the best and wildest experiences in college? Oh, that's closer. That's a little bit. Don't tell my wife that. That's a little bit closer. But I mean, I don't know, some of those prank
what
wars.
What were you guys really doing at TAC?
Some of those prank wars we
I
started.
could pray more rosaries than you can.
I'll tell you what, we came this close to putting someone's smart car in the Commons as a prank. If those crash bars weren't on the door, we would have done it. My buddy
gosh.
John Paul organized a whole wing of the dorms are single sex, and so he organized a whole wing of our dorm to do at open mic night. We got our RA in the middle of us, and we all sang Kokomo by the Beach Boys at him while wearing Hawaiian shirts. That was probably up there near the top of my college experience. And it's only slightly below, on my personal accomplishments, it's only slightly below my senior thesis, and that's only slightly below marriage and kids for me. So we got to talk about what precisely about college are we talking about, and then the conversation gets much more interesting.
Really? Because
I
look back at my time in college, it's like I would give all that up in a heartbeat just to have my family, and it's much better. I don't know. Life now is much better with family than any memory or experience that I had in college, and that includes my 3.5 months in Europe.
Oh, I don't disagree. It's close. It's close.
Not for me, man. I don't know. What are they teaching you over at TAC?
What are you not getting up to at Francisco? Man. Turns out when you take away alcohol from Catholic kids and have a dry campus at TAC, you got to get creative when you want to have fun.
Yeah, clearly.
You gotta, I don't know. What did you think? What happened at your quote unquote Catholic school, Emily? What was the wildest thing you got into?
Oh gosh, you don't. I protested some drag shows. That
Nice.
was the wildest
Wow.
thing I did,
Hey.
and I got threats and had the campus officer, and the dean of students back trying to keep me safe because I had very angry LGBTQ students in particular, that were mad at me.
Should have
for
started
that.
singing Kokomo at them.
Yeah, Johnny, don't go to that school, okay? Johnny is here.
Don't go.
He's getting ready to go off to college, and he's somewhere between. Can I say it? Somewhere between Franciscan University and Thomas Aquinas College.
I think I gave the more compelling argument, if you ask me.
I'm just saying, man. If you want to have more fun, just go to Stupid.
That's.
But don't leave the campus.
just don't leave campus. You might get shot. On that wonderful note.
See, at TAC, we had a nice big long mountain road separating us from the scary city. With Franciscan, it's 2 steps away, and then you're in the Wild West.
Yeah, well, you lock your car on campus too, because you never know which locals are walking on campus.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that.
You only have to worry about hikers on TAC, and they have to be fit enough to get up there anyway. So they've kind of earned that right.
All right, I have an idea. I got an idea for a super show. You and I make our cases for a university to Johnny. Johnny sits in the middle, and you and I are making the case for each university.
But the catch is, it's a completely unacademic case. It's everything except the curriculum.
That's all I have, man. What are you talking?
No.
No hate on Dr. Brennan and Dr. Hahn.
We gotta put some weights on Franciscan because you guys outnumber me like 12-1 on Catholic Answers staff. So I need to take away all the
That's true.
heavy Catholic intellectuals, the well-known ones, I should say, that are at Franciscan. I need to level the playing field a little bit. Be like, you don't know the tutors at TAC, you don't know the professors at TAC, but they're just as smart. They just don't have podcasts. That's fine.
Meanwhile, all right. On that note, we'll wrap it up there. Any final thoughts, Emily?
No, marriage is great. Don't fall for the scam that,
Amen.
being a girl boss and working your way up the corporate ladder will be more fulfilling at the end of the night. Because what is that all worth if you go home alone and you die? This is depressing, but literally you die.
We came full circle. We came
Yeah.
full circle, really.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You die and then no one remembers you, and that's it. There was your life. That sounds extremely depressing to me. So I don't know. Maybe
right.
that's just me.
So love someone to death instead.
Love someone to death. Don't pick the Canadian Services have made.
Correct.
Euthanize them.
Correct.
All right. After we're going to take about a 4 or 5 minute break. When we come back, got 2 full hours of Dr. Carlo Broussard, and I will not be hosting. It's actually going to be Thomas. So we'll see you back here in a few minutes. Emily, thank you so much for this. Is a lot of fun.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
All right. Cut it, Johnny.